This is the Dogs on the Hill podcast with your host, Reeves Fisackerly.
Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Dogs on the Hill podcast. I'm your host, Reeves Fisackerly, and we are back in our usual studio after a, pretty long summer. But I am joined, so excited to have him here today, friend of the show, Diego Spielmann. Diego, how are you?
I am wonderful. Glad to be back.
I'm so glad that you agreed to be here today. So, if you were not aware, college football, I guess it technically started 2 weekends ago. We had week 0, but week 1, all the real deal stuff happened this past weekend, and we actually have the last game to wrap it all up tonight between Clemson and Duke. But we're just going to recap the week. We're going to talk about some games that stood out to us, some games that we watched, and some storylines that we're going to be looking for going forward in the season. First game that I want to mention is Ohio State, Indiana. I don't have a ton to say about this. However, Ohio State comes away with a road victory, 23-3. A win's a win, and they ultimately got it done in the end. However, the Buckeyes had a very sluggish, lethargic start, not really getting anything going. It was 7-0 at the end of the first, 10-3 after halftime.
You look at their offensive stats. I mean, Kyle McCord, 240 yards, an interception. It's just slow offense.
No passing touchdowns.
The rush couldn't get going. And then, defensively, they held up well. 8 for 16, 58 yards for Indiana's quarterback. But
from a win or loss perspective, there was never a point in time where I thought Indiana was going to win this game. They only scored that field goal they got in the second quarter were the only points they put up in the entire game. But I was just concerned for Ohio State in the sense that, yeah, you're on the road. Yeah, it's week 1. But, Indiana is a team that should not give you this much trouble, right?
No. I wouldn't start panicking, obviously, but at the same time, Indiana, Ohio State's ranked number 3.
Yes.
It should have been one of those games that we're going to talk about later that was like a 45-10 game.
The thing that works in their favor is their next 2 games are at home, and I don't want to necessarily say easy opponents, but they have Youngstown State and then Western Kentucky. So you have some opportunities to clean it up and get your act together. However, on the flip side of that is you don't really have Power 5 competition for the next pretty much the rest of the month.
Yeah.
So does that help you at all? Are you going to be at a point where you're just kind of going through the motions and getting the wins, or are we going to see a 60-point performance at some point? Is it even fair to expect a 60-point performance?
I would hope that they are able to put up at least 40 against
Youngstown. Yeah, definitely.
I think that's what they need. If this was the first week, they felt sloppy, and it's week 1. A lot of the games, a lot of people are making mistakes. A lot of people are getting injured because they're not in the groove yet for football. But if they're not in the groove by conference play, they struggle against Youngstown State offensively, or they struggle against Western Kentucky, then I would start worrying.
Yeah, and even before then, because they have Notre Dame in week 4, which, they beat Navy by 35 points.
Yeah,
so,
Navy.
Yeah. Not that's an impressive win, but it's, you still got to take Notre Dame seriously.
Yeah, and then they beat Tennessee State by a lot too.
The biggest thing I want to see is just improvement in the run game, because their leading rusher, Trayanum, only had 57 yards. They could not get it. It surprises me that they couldn't get it going on the ground.
So. Yeah, and it was only 8 carries too, right?
Yes. So Ohio State does get the win in. They're fine. It's week 1, but it just was not a very pretty performance.
No.
So next up is probably the game of the week. For me, it was the game of the week going into this week. And the first half lived up to the hype. The second half was a murder. Florida State takes down LSU 45-24. It was a neutral site game here in Orlando. And at halftime, LSU's only up 17-14. It looks like it's a pretty back and forth game. It's looking good. And then Florida State just comes out absolutely rolling in the second half. LSU was held to a near scoreless second half. They did not score until there was 1 minute and 15 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And it was one of those moments where it's like, oh well, they got through our defense. It doesn't matter. Like, next possession, they need it down, and they won. I will go ahead and say, entering this season, it's week 1. Again, this is week 1. But I was shocked with the amount of predictions I was seeing for LSU to win the SEC West.
I saw a lot of predictions for Florida State to make the CFP.
I saw those as well, and I want to get to that. But first, what I was going to say with LSU is, why? Like, why? Okay, I understand the roster retention was very impressive. They kept almost their entire roster from last year, adding to it through transfers and recruiting. But are we forgetting that Alabama exists? Like, I know we haven't had a college football national championship from Alabama in a few years, but why do we keep doubting Nick Saban? Why are we putting LSU above Alabama in preseason rankings?
No, it's a dumb mistake.
Why did LSU enter the season ranked number 5?
That actually surprised me when I was watching the game and I looked down at the and I saw LSU 5 and Florida State 8, or what was it? And I was like, oh.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, Florida State was 8.
I was like, huh, that's actually surprising. I thought Florida State would be higher than LSU. I didn't think LSU would be that high. What surprises me, and like I get that Tennessee lost a lot of people, but Tennessee's so low compared to LSU, yet Tennessee arguably had a way better year than LSU last year.
Most definitely. And like, I get it. So LSU did play in the SEC championship game against Georgia last year.
Yeah.
They did take 3 losses, though, in that year. And 2021, LSU went 6-6. 2020, they lost 5 games. They went 7-5. So like, LSU is definitely improving and going in the right direction. But they just all of a sudden are like, yeah, they're going to win the SEC West again. Like, no. Alabama is still here.
I feel like part of it is also, I think a lot of people are still on that 2019, which is arguably one of the greatest teams in history.
Definitely, for sure.
And so people keep putting LSU higher than they should be because they're like, oh, well, they have the history. It's not Alabama.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the motive is coming from there, but, you know, I used to always say in the pro seasons, like, why are we doubting Brady? Like, dude always comes in clutch. And I've been saying that about Nick Saban for the last several years as well.
I will never bet against Nick Saban.
Never bet against Nick Saban. And if I lose, then I will take that in stride. But yes, you said Florida State in the CFP picture. I also was like, why are we talking about Florida State in the CFP picture?
Yeah.
But again, it's only week 1. But Jordan Travis absolutely went off last night. He had 342 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Led his team to a 21-point fourth quarter, 45 points put together in the entire game. Is Florida State the team to beat in the ACC?
I think so. I mean, we'll obviously wait to see how Clemson plays tonight, see if they're any good. And then, I mean, from all the games I watched through the ACC or Virginia, obviously, no chance. I mean, Pitt had their year, and then they fell off hard.
Pitt and Wake Forest was that year. Yeah.
And I like UNC. I think they have a strong team. Drake May is going to be – we'll talk about them later. But I just don't see a world where UNC is better than Florida State at the moment.
We'll see. But, yeah, I definitely am like, okay, it's only week 1, but I'm definitely willing to give Florida State their flowers. That was a really impressive game.
Oh, yeah.
Jordan Travis definitely, like, after week 1 in the week 1 Heisman conversation.
He was feeling himself, waving the crowd goodbye and everything. It was good.
So, I definitely will put Florida. I'm not going to say they're going to make the CFP right now. It's still so early for that. But, yeah, sure. Florida State is a deadly team this year. And next week, they're continuing against Southern Miss. That's a home game for them. They should have a pretty easy time with that. Then they go on the road and play Boston College, and then they play at Clemson in week 4. So that'll probably answer our questions if we have any.
That'll be the big game in the ACC.
As for LSU, they go home and take on Grambling next week. Should be a win for them. That's an FCS school. Then they go on the road in Starkville to play Mississippi State. And then week 4, they are home against Arkansas. That game is earlier this year than it normally is. That's normally a November game.
Yeah.
To boot. So, I mean, LSU can recover. Their second half was bad. The second half was really bad. But Daniel still put up 347 passing yards. He was their leading rusher, though. So that is an area of concern. I'm thinking we need some more run game there. But yeah, I mean, should get back on your feet with Grambling, and then at Mississippi State, I mean, I'm not going to predict that game right now.
I'll predict it. I see State wins.
Hey, State in Starkville. It's a noon game too, so that definitely favors them.
It is a hard environment to play in, but LSU does have the hardest environment.
Death Valley and Starkville are both incredibly hard to play in. They're just loud, so loud. But that'll be a good game. So maybe 9-16. That's where we're looking. But Florida State throttles LSU in Orlando. All right, we're going to stay in the ACC. We're going to talk about North and South Carolina. That was my game of the day on Saturday. Like going in, I knew that was going to be the game I was most looking forward to. Again, had another pretty close game, 7-7 after the first quarter. UNC takes a 17-14 lead in halftime. And then I don't know if I want to say North Carolina ran away with it because it wasn't as much of a slaughter. But they did get a big win, 31-17, led by a 14-point third quarter. South Carolina only got the sole field goal in the fourth quarter. In the second half, for me, biggest thing I observed here, Spencer Rattler was having a rough night. On one hand, his offensive line probably wasn't, I don't want to say they probably weren't helping him out, but he got sacked 7 times. We've seen that before. It makes me think of, I guess it was 2 years ago, Titans and Bengals. When Burrow got sacked like
Joe Burrow was
7, 8, or 9 times against the Titans. Makes me think of that. They still won that game though.
Yep.
But Spencer Rattler got sacked 7 times, which definitely props to the UNC defensive line. But for me, just from what I was watching, I feel like that kind of says a lot about Rattler because he was holding onto the ball for so long. Like I get trying to make a play, but sometimes you either just have to throw away, decide you're going to run, or just commit to a pass.
Yeah.
Because there were so many times where he would be back there, he'd pump fake, and then stutter. And I'm like, I'm not a college quarterback. So
of course,
I'm not telling him what to do, but I'm just saying from an observational perspective, you got to commit to something.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is, but you got to do something. You can't just sit back there. There was a 4th and 2 where they were in the red zone. He decided he was going to run for it, but he decided way too late. As soon as he takes like one step forward, just gets plowed.
Yeah.
He threw 350 yards.
No, I mean,
which is a lot.
In the air, he was doing when he threw the freaking ball. It was good.
It was good. But he didn't have any touchdowns.
No.
And I want to give props to South Carolina's defense too. They bailed him out a lot. They intercepted May twice, and both of those interceptions were in big time moments in the second half.
Yeah.
Rattler and that Carolina offense had opportunities, just didn't execute. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to blame a bit of it on the fact that they got no run game going.
True.
12 carries, 23 yards for Joyner, and then everyone else had negative yardage. I mean, McDowell had -1, Leggett had -2, and Spencer Rattler had -22, but I mean, he was getting killed the whole game.
Yeah.
In the air, when they got the ball off, it was going forward.
I mean, Leggett had almost 200 yards reception.
Yeah, and then Rattler never turned the ball over, but it's just the defense of UNC was getting to him. And I think there's only so much you can do, but his decision-making when holding onto the ball for way too long was getting to him.
And sure, maybe it's week 1 jitters. I get it, but you got to commit, man.
Yeah.
You got to decide what you're going to do and go for it.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the other side of the ball. Drake May. All right. Dude had a good game. 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 31-17 win.
Yep.
Is he really a top... let's just say this. Is he really a first-round draft pick?
I don't know.
I definitely don't think so.
I would like to see later into the year how well he's playing, but at the same time, like he's been touted as like a Heisman candidate. It's like Caleb Williams
all off season.
Yeah. It's been Caleb Williams and then everyone else, and like everyone else has changed, but I've consistently seen Drake May in between like 2 to 5 in the rankings.
This just makes me think, like, okay, we've had some really good quarterback years. 2021 was when we had Mac, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence. Like, that was a great quarterback class. I don't know if we'll ever top that. Last year, we only had 3 go in the first round, but it was still a pretty good class. We had Bryce, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis goes early second round.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're getting caught in this, like, oh, we need to have, like, an absolutely loaded quarterback class. which is not true to me. Like, I really like the quarterback position as well, but like, think about Kenny Pickett's draft year. He's the only one who went in the first round.
Yeah,
He's the only one who should have gone in the first round. Like, I was completely okay with that. And this year I'm seeing like, or not even this year, it makes me think of 2 years ago where we were thinking, oh, it's going to be Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell as the first two quarterbacks off the board. Well, Spencer Rattler got benched that year and then transferred to South Carolina. And Sam Howell, did he go that year?
No, I don't think he went that year.
Because I don't think he went that year, but if he did, it doesn't matter. He was like a 4th, 5th round draft pick.
Yeah.
And I feel like this year we're talking about Caleb Williams and Drake Maye. And trust me, Caleb Williams will be and should be a first round draft pick. He might win his second Heisman. I don't know. But like, yes, Caleb Williams is definitively an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Drake Maye might be. But I promise you, you do not like I do not think he's worth a first round draft pick. Because where did this come from? He had a good year last year. He had a good year.
I mean, 4,300 yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions.
Good year.
Really
Very
good year.
impressive. But all of a sudden, we're talking about him winning the Heisman, and he's the second best quarterback in the country. I don't know who the second best quarterback in the country is. Frankly, right now,
Joe Milton.
think Caleb. Okay, Joe Milton's really good. Frankly, right now, it's Caleb Williams and everybody else.
Yeah.
And Joe Milton, yeah, he can make a case because that Orange Bowl performance last year was insane. But I
Yeah.
gotta see more.
No,
That was
I
one
need to see
game.
more as well. From
So
him.
I just, where did this Drake Maye narrative come from?
I don't know. I mean, I think definitely like if NFL teams want him, he needs to step up. And what we saw yesterday was like one of the interceptions wasn't his fault, to be fair. But
No, definitely, yeah.
if he has a year where it's like 40 touchdowns, but then way more interceptions, I'd start worrying. I think this is the year that Drake Maye actually has pressure on him. I think this is the year people are saying North Carolina could be a team to take the ACC away from Clemson and Florida Southern. And so there's pressure on him to perform. Does he play well under pressure?
We'll find out. North Carolina had the lead for most, if not all, of that game. South Carolina's a good team, but they're not a Clemson or a Florida State. They're not an Alabama. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens further down the road. So USC was one of those teams who played in week 0. They played week 0 and week 1. I just figured we'd go ahead and talk about him since we've been talking about Caleb Williams. Now, USC has had a pretty easy schedule so far. They've played San Jose State and they've played Nevada. However, in 2 weeks and in 2 games, USC has scored 122 points.
Yeah.
They scored 56 against San Jose State, and they just scored 66 against Nevada. Caleb Williams yesterday against Nevada threw for 5 touchdowns and 319 yards. USC is lethal.
Yeah, that offense it's good. And I mean, yeah, of course, they played San Jose State and Nevada.
Right, strength of schedule.
And it's not getting much harder from here. But, I mean, you're putting up 56 and 66 against FBS teams. They're not even FCS teams. They're good teams. Like,
Sure, they're Mountain West schools, they're not Power 5, but, I mean, they're not shabby teams. San Jose State has contended for that conference title for the last few years.
yeah, and I think they won it, like, under their coach that they currently have. That, from what I remember listening to the game that they played yesterday, the coach has, like, completely turned around that program. And they put up 28 against USC.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
But you got to put them more than 56. So,
So not an easy task. And I think this is the year that Caleb Williams really, like, just cements himself number 1 overall pick. NFL teams are going to, start bagging their games. I mean, I guess it's the Cardinals that will be. 'Cause
Yeah.
They're starting Josh Dobbs.
so if you're not aware, the Cardinals have cut 2 quarterbacks. They just have Kyler and Josh Dobbs, correct?
I think they have a third guy, but he might be on the practice squad.
Okay, so the Cardinals have just been absolutely cutting their team down.
Yeah.
It's a true absolute tanking happening over in Arizona. So yeah, I mean, I guess if they end up with the first overall pick, yeah,
It
you
will
could
be.
totally see Caleb Williams
I
going
think
over
Caleb
there.
Williams will go there unless something changes. But his schedule until Notre Dame is not that hard.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at it. So they're going to have a home game against Stanford next week, which they'll probably let them up. I'm not going to say they score 50, 60 points for any of these games, but just,
But if they put up 50 points against
they've
a
been
Pac-12
averaging
team,
60 points. Yeah. So they're going to beat Stanford by a lot.
yeah,
They're going to go on the road at Arizona State, and They're probably going to put up a lot.
Yeah.
And then they go at Colorado, which will be interesting. We'll get to Colorado in a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that game has potential to be closer, but right now I'm still inclined to say USC will win that game.
Yeah.
Then they have a home game against Arizona. Should absolutely win that one. And then, like you said, on the road at Notre Dame. So that will be harder because it's on the road and it's Notre Dame.
Yeah, but I guess, that is also the rivalry game.
Yes.
It is the big rivalry, and I guess that will. I don't know Notre Dame's schedule, but Notre Dame every year gets ranked really high, starts playing really good, plays one good team, and falls apart. But they do play against Ohio State.
And they lost to Marshall last year, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, don't forget that. But
I had friends at that game, too.
But looking at USC's schedule, you could very easily, not easily, it's very plausible that they could completely undefeated. Their hardest game is at Oregon.
Yeah, I don't want to say it, but I won't be surprised if by the end of the year USC could try to be a top 2 team in the CFB.
Dude, look at their offense.
Yeah, their offense is insane.
Yeah, I'm not going to bash you for that right now. I totally think that's a plausibility. And then they do have a home game against Utah, and the only thing about Utah is Utah has beaten USC in the Pac-12 championship the last 2 years in a row. So
yeah,
kind of have to exercise some demons there. But I still think USC is a more skilled team, probably.
Yeah,
should I hesitate to say that?
No, I think you're not wrong in saying that. And I think last year as well in that Pac-12 championship, USC was the better team, but Utah, it's a championship game, whichever team's better on that day. I think if USC and Utah played each other 9 more times, I'm taking USC 9 more times. Okay. I'm not changing, but it's whatever team's better on that day.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. That's pretty much the fact of the matter. But USC offense, absolutely lethal. All right, so entering this season, Colorado was another one of those teams where I don't want to say I was doubting or putting any negative energy on, but look, Colorado won 1 game last year.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders is a phenomenal coach, but he hasn't been at the Power 5 level. And that's not a bash at Jackson State or the FCS or the SWAC. That's not a bash at all. It's just FCS is a different level than FBS. So for me, going into it, I was like, look, they win more than 1 game this year. It's an absolute win. Colorado just has not been a very talented team, very successful team the last few years. But anyways, he comes in. They play their first game on the road against TCU. This was the first game that I watched because it's the big noon game.
Yeah.
And this game was so much fun, so back and forth. Colorado comes away with a 3-point win, 45-42. Shedeur Sanders throws for 510 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's the most passing yards in a game in Colorado football history.
Yeah, he first game comes in and just dominates. And I had doubts on Shedeur Sanders as well, because I guess I saw it as coach's kid, and I didn't know how good he was coming out of high school or anything, because I don't care about the high school kids. I just want to see how well you perform at the college level. He was playing at Jackson State. No disrespect to Jackson State, but now you're in the Pac-12 and about to be the Big 12.
Yeah, now it's about to be Big 12. Yeah.
So I was holding off. I was like, I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to perform as well as people are pointing him out to be. And then he comes out, drops 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, and makes me eat my own words. And it was a really impressive performance by him.
Dude ate. And not only just him, but Travis Hunter, who I did not know was playing both sides of the ball. He played 110 snaps. Oh, God. Which is ridiculous. I don't know if Deion, when he played, also played both sides of the ball. So I don't know, maybe we're seeing a little bit of that in this, but yeah.
Colorado's
got some insane talent.
Yeah, I'm quite excited to see how they go from here. Travis Hunter, 120 yards receiving, and then he had the interception, which was an insane interception, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But, I also don't want to say something that I'll regret, but I think TCU is not even close to the same TCU that they were last year.
No, definitely not.
And so that ranked win seems a little... I always take the ranked wins at the beginning of the season when it's the preseason poll a little less important. And we talked about this before we got on here. Would I rank Would I rank TCU again? No. Would I rank Colorado again, though? I say no. I still think that they should be just outside of the top 25. Wait to see how well they play from here on out, and then they can get in.
Yeah, well, and the other thing to think about is, I mean, so I've been saying this for a while. Rankings, at this point, rankings are just political. They don't matter at all. I used to say they don't matter until week 6, but I've realized in the last 2 years, rankings don't mean anything until the actual CFP rankings show.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about when the first CFP rankings come out in like week 8. I'm talking about like this is the final selection Sunday.
Yeah.
But until now, they're just kind of like a novelty. But yeah, I would say you can put Colorado in the lower 20s right now just because it's 1 week and they had a really impressive win.
Yeah.
But I mean, going forward, they have a pretty solid, like easy schedule. They've got Nebraska at home, should win that. They got Colorado State at home,
Definitely
should win that. Their first big test to me is at Oregon week 4 because they go at Oregon week 4 and then week 5 they're home against USC.
Yeah, and I think if they even put up a close fight against Oregon, I think it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, we'll see. I mean, they definitely, the one thing I would point out is obviously 510 yards is a lot. It's great, but their rushing game, they were averaging like 3 yards per rush.
I think that's a common theme that I've seen this week, and that's just across the board. Several teams have struggled with running the football. And you know me, like I am a huge advocate for running the football because it keeps the clock moving. So if you can run efficiently and keep the clock going, you can win, and you can win faster.
Yeah, like just a quick pivot from this game, I was watching the Rutgers-Northwestern game, and Rutgers, going into the second quarter, had the ball for like 14 minutes, and Northwestern had it for a minute. Like they ran out the clock, which I think that's why it's an important thing to have a run game. And I mean, 13 carries, 45 yards, a touchdown. It's not bad, but like I would like them to see them improve that to make sure that they're not solely on Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders working.
Yeah. I think back to those Arkansas teams when it was Brett Bielema led. You had Brandon Allen, Alex Collins, Hunter Henry. That team, I mean, Alex Collins was a phenomenal part of that team, but they dominated in time of possession.
Yeah.
And sure, I mean, I think their best season together might have been like 8-4 or 9-3, but like you win games by holding onto the football. So
True.
You win games by not giving your opponent a chance to score. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't want to say Colorado's the real deal right now, and I also do not want to brush them aside. But I was very impressed by that win. Yeah, Colorado looks good.
Yeah, so I'm hopeful for a bowl game.
That I don't have conference championship expectations for Colorado. Like I said, my expectations going into this summer or going into this season was you won 1 game last year, you win 2, you win.
Yeah.
So yeah, go 6-6.
Get a bowl game.
Phenomenal season.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. I have been an advocate for a while of doing full conference schedules. Like everybody that you play is in your conference. Or if you don't do that, the teams who you play who are not in your conference are other Power 5 schools. So for example, if you're Alabama, you play like 8 or 9 games against SEC opponents, and then those other 3 games you play like a Big 10, a Big 12, a Pac 12, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because you want to play on the same level. That's just how I've always seen it. And the biggest argument that I always get in return for that is, oh, well, but like then you have a really hard schedule. Or like, oh, then you don't have any easy wins. And my response to that every single time is, yeah, that's the point. Because, I mean, think about it. In the NFL, there's no easy games. Sure, there are bad teams in the NFL.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
You still have like a chance of winning. Like the Eagles when they play the Cardinals, or think about last year, the Eagles and the Texans. I think everyone would agree that the Eagles are a better team than the Texans. But the Texans almost beat the Eagles. And what I'm getting at is like they're all on the same level. So when you have Power 5 schools who play FCS schools, okay, sure, you get an easy win. And like you're paying the other school to come play you.
Yeah.
So sure, you're helping them out, but like it's boring to watch. And like if you went 12-0 and you played like 3 FCS schools, all right, great. But if you went 12-0 and you played all Power 5 schools, That's freaking impressive.
Yeah.
So I say that to say Oregon State beating Portland State 81-7 is not exciting. I know Arkansas State is not FCS, but they're lower FBS. They're group of 5. Oklahoma beating Arkansas State 73-0 is not fun.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's hard for me because I think I love watching the lower teams get the opportunity to play these big teams. At the same time, I completely understand where you're coming from because ridiculously 81-7, Portland State might never want to play a football game ever again.
Dude, that one was just so bad it was comedic because, first of all, that's the most points Oregon has scored in a football game since 1936, which is insane. You told me, like, I don't know what the duck's name is, but the mascot duck did like 536 push-ups. That's not something I'm getting upset about. That's the comedic part.
Yeah.
But like one of the things that I'm getting upset about is like this Arkansas State Oklahoma game. I mean, this Arkansas State coach was devastated on the sidelines.
Oh yeah.
And like, yeah, I feel bad. Oklahoma won 73-0.
Yep.
Like, what was the point? To get a free win to start the season? Good for you. Like, that's just, it's not exciting to me. And okay, the other team makes some bucks.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, and it's rare that the team they're paying wins.
Very rare. But like Oregon was winning 50-7 at halftime.
Yeah, and
like, what do you do if you're the coach of Portland State at that time? Like, I know coming into the game you didn't expect to win.
Yeah,
but like you're losing 50-7, and you have to be like, all right, guys, it's not over till it's over. Like, I don't know. I've never been a fan of this. And I know I'm in a very small percentage of people who are against this, but
yeah,
especially now that like the Big Ten is going to have 18 teams in it,
Oh,
do
yeah,
an
that's
all
fair.
Big Ten schedule.
So like the only thing is I love the out of conference games just because it's something different. I mean, 'cause
Yeah, definitely.
if year in year out, like I watch Tennessee play Alabama and all the other SEC schools over and over and over again, and I don't get like Tennessee Virginia was like, oh, that's exciting. That's a new team. I mean, we crushed them, but like,
Yeah, but it's
still
Power 5.
Yeah, that's fine. But
Florida,
then like
Utah was good. Colorado, TCU was good.
yeah, but then if like Tennessee played like East Tennessee State, like I'm not gonna watch that.
Well,
but-
and like, okay, it's one thing to do them at the beginning of the season, but then like they do it at the end of the season too, and the SEC is notorious for doing this. Like,
yeah, I think
I don't want to watch in week 11 Georgia play Charleston State.
I think
I don't care.
if I remember correctly, Alabama played like the Citadel or whatever, and there was like no one in the stand, and Nick Saban was upset about that. It was like, why would anyone go to that game?
Why would you go? So sure, it's an easy win, and you're paying the other school, and they get some financial benefits from it, but I'm just very against playing FCS, and even in some cases lower FBS. Like, okay, I know Cincinnati was group of 5, and they had a really good season. UTSA's had some good years. Coastal's had some good years. Okay, fine. Like, I don't know exactly what the criteria needs to be, but like,
Yeah.
I don't want to watch these absolute bloodbath slaughters. Like, that's not fun.
I think the other point is that the one thing that will never be the reason this doesn't end is the fact that they are paying the teams. Football is so expensive for a school to hold on to. That's why there's an Instagram account that covers D3 football, and it'll like recap every year, and it's like just teams folding and creating new teams and folding because they can't afford it. And so that's the only like sad part about it is that the FCS schools kind of need this, but also they're getting slaughtered when they go to these games.
Yeah, and like that just kind of takes like a lot of the spirit of the game out of it for me. Because like I don't want to see Ole Miss absolutely throttle Mercer or Alabama just put a thumping down on Middle Tennessee State. Like,
Yeah.
sure, way to go, you got to win. Like,
That's
and
fair.
I know the money that they get. Like some people say, like I think some people have reported that like the money that they get is almost more than their entire athletic budget. So sure, like I'm glad you're helping the team out, but like I feel like you can financially help teams in ways that doesn't require you to absolutely slaughter them on national television.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
Utah takes on Florida and wins 24-11. This game was in Utah. And fun fact, This is Florida's first non-conference road game since like the 90s.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
They
I
have
didn't
not
know.
left the state of Florida for a non-conference road game since sometime in the 90s. So now, I think a lot of people were picking Utah to win this game going into it. Florida and Utah did play last year. I'm pretty sure Utah won that game. Too.
Yeah.
That was an AR. That was when Anthony Richardson was still with them, and that game was at the Swamp. And I think just a lot of people have more faith in Utah than Florida this year. Utah is coming off of back-to-back Pac-12 championships. Florida had a pretty disappointing year last year. I know it was Billy Napier's first year, but would have liked to see a little more out of them. And then, I mean, this wasn't a throttle. They only won by 13, but Utah led the whole way.
I mean, yeah, if you look, it was 24-3
going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and then they scored 8 points, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, and then I was looking at the stats. I was like, 333 yards, a touchdown, interception. It was a lot better than what I remember watching. Then I scrolled down. I'm going to sound like a broken record.
Rush yards.
13 in total. They had 20. Trevor Etienne had 25, but including minus yards, they had 13 in total.
Yeah, so common thread of week one is a lot of teams need to figure out the run game. But yeah, I mean, I think Florida offensively, like from an offensive stat perspective, total yardage, outplayed Utah.
Yeah.
But Utah, did what you're supposed to do and scored the most points. So Cam Rising did not even play that game.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Utah was sitting 8 starters due to injury or whatnot, and still pretty comfortably beat Florida.
Yeah. And like you said, I didn't look at this until the box score, but yeah, they were up 24-3 and going into the fourth quarter. Utah played 3 quarterbacks. They played Bryson Barnes, who did most of it, Nate Johnson, and Devon Vele. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really know what there is to say here other than Utah won like we expected to. Florida had a solid offensive performance, but yeah, nothing to really get excited about.
No, yeah, I wouldn't be happy if I'm a Florida fan.
You would not be?
No. And then from here, you go to McNeese State, McNeese State comes to you.
You should win that.
And then Tennessee, Florida.
And that is at the Swamp.
Yes.
So everybody knows the narrative of Tennessee last year. Tennessee was number 1 in the inaugural CFP poll. Hendon Hooker, they beat Alabama last year, took down the goalposts. I mean, Tennessee was great last year.
And then they lost to South Carolina.
I have a lot of faith in Joe Milton. So
yeah, I mean, I can tell you watching the game, Joe Milton looked good versus Virginia, but I think it is a bit of a worrisome that we don't have Jalen Hyatt. Every receiver was dropping the ball. They again, week one, everyone's going to look a little bit sloppy, but Joe Milton was throwing some good throws, and I don't know if you saw, but there was one that he heaved for 40-plus yards and just fell straight through his hands, and he was wide open. And it was like, oh, my God, it's going to be one of these years.
Oh, man. Well, I think Tennessee will win that game. The thing going in Florida's favor is that it is in Gainesville.
Yeah.
It's hard to play in Gainesville.
You never know with Tennessee. But
never know. But Florida, I mean,
they have I wouldn't say
I don't want to say
schedule.
easy, especially given how they played last year. But the only games I would be really concerned about. Well, actually, your back half of your schedule is really tough.
Yeah, they do have Florida State, LSU, and Georgia.
You got to go. Just looking at their conference games: home against Tennessee, at Kentucky, home against Vandy, at South Carolina, home against Georgia. Or no, sorry, that's neutral site. Home against Arkansas, at LSU, at Missouri, home against Florida State. Yeah, you got a hard schedule.
Yeah, and I think realistically, I don't see them beating any of these ranked teams unless they turn it around.
I don't even see them beating Arkansas, honestly.
Yeah, that's fair. But I don't know. I mean, if, by some miracle, I would really hate for this to happen because I will be in Gainesville for this game. They beat Tennessee, and then they go and they continue to win all their games. They get to Georgia, put up a good fight against Georgia. I could see them maybe beating Florida State or LSU. But LSU did, again, I guess they're falling down. So
well, LSU, I think, is still a good team. For me, the storyline of that game was I didn't expect Florida State to be that good.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very true.
Yeah. As for Utah, I mean, their strength of schedule is going to be easier than Florida's, but yeah, they're at Baylor next week. They got Weber State, UCLA, Oregon State, Cal, USC, Oregon, Arizona State, Washington, Arizona, and Colorado.
To be fair, they play a lot more ranked teams.
They do. USC, Oregon are probably the only two I'd be really worried about. I'm surprised Oregon State is ranked that high.
I mean, they have God, I do not know how to pronounce this guy's name, but it's like DJ.
Oh, DJ Uyunglele.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clemson quarterback transfer.
And he played pretty decent against San Jose State, but so yeah, I mean, they look good. But like you said, they're a bit just for show, the rankings.
Yeah, it's political right now.
And I mean, Oregon State's not making the CFP. They're not winning the Pac-12.
No. I mean,
I guess they could win it next year, which is something I want to talk about at the end.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about it. So I've talked about this on the show before. My last episode was kind of filling you guys in. So where we last left it was the Pac-12 was down to 4 teams. That was Oregon State, Washington State, Cal, and Stanford. We've had Oregon and Washington leave to join the Big Ten alongside Ohio State. No, excuse me, not Ohio State. Alongside USC and UCLA.
Yep.
We had Arizona, Arizona State, and Colorado all book it for the Big 12. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to say this is old news, but I haven't said it on the show yet. Cal and Stanford are officially joining the ACC
alongside
SMU. So, this just makes perfect sense because my 2 favorite East Coast cities are Stanford and Berkeley.
Again, Atlantic Coast Conference, Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not as upset about the SMU thing because it's like, okay, whatever. But like, bro.
Yeah.
I thought Oregon having to go to like Ohio State and USC having to go to like Michigan was gonna be a lot. Cal and Stanford are gonna have to go to North Carolina, Florida State, University of Miami.
Yeah, there are gonna be some
like
long flights.
I've talked about this before. I feel like I'm a broken record. Diego said he was a broken record with the rush yards. I feel like I'm a broken record with this stupid realignment stuff. Like, these are football decisions being made that are affecting the entire school.
Yep.
Cal soccer is going to have to fly to do a game in Coral Gables, Florida now. They're going to have to like leave on a Tuesday.
Yep.
Just to play a game on like a Wednesday. And then it doesn't make sense to immediately come back. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. We actually have to play Florida State next week. Why would we fly back to California? Let's just stay out here and play Florida State. And then it's like, oh, wait, actually, we got to play North Carolina soon. We don't need to go back. Now you have kids doing virtual class on their computers on planes, which is not the same thing as in person. Don't even start with that. And then you're like, wait a minute, I haven't been on campus in 4 weeks. Like, this is stupid.
Yeah. Football, basketball, baseball. But then from there, it just trickles down. Like, the rest of the sports, let's be honest, they don't make any money. And now they're going to have to fork out so much more money.
Well, because I remember seeing something I have been citing this for years. I saw LSU's 2017 finance report. And it was like football made almost $100 million.
Yep.
Basketball, like 2 or 3. Every other sport was in the negative.
I think baseball made like $800K as well, and that was it.
Yeah. But like swimming, minus $2 million. Gymnastics didn't make money. Golf didn't make money. And like for me, this is where like football needs to be separated from other sports. Like, the way the conferences were set up before was not perfect from a geographic perspective, but it works, Like, I feel like you need to keep the original conferences or however as they were prior to this madness for other sports, and then football can do whatever the heck they want. Because, like, football you play once a week. So you can fly across the country and then come back.
Yeah, and, like, it's hard to say. Because, again, this isn't so much like, oh, let's blame Texas and Oklahoma for starting this whole thing. This is the dude in the Pac-12 screwing up the TV deal.
I had an
by so much. And then, I mean, I don't know. I guess, obviously, like, Notre Dame is part of the ACC yet, except football.
Just not in football,
So it is possible. And, like, obviously, us being at a D2 school, we do have teams on campus that are considered D1. And so, like, it can work. It's just it would be I don't know. It's such a mess right now.
Yeah, I mean, my whole last episode was all about that. The Pac-12 did this to themselves, but oh my God, it just. Yes. Anyways, this is an exhausting argument.
I would like to pose a question to you.
Yeah, hit me.
Pac-12 dissolves.
Yeah, they have to because
where do Oregon State and Washington State go?
Mountain West. Like
you
they
think
have
Mountain
to.
West?
Well, because here's what. Okay, so Oregon State and Washington State are the only two teams left in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is going to do everything that it absolutely can to stay alive, which I mean, as it should. However, who are you going to get?
That's fair.
Who are you going to get? I mean, before there were only two teams, I was like, all right, Boise State, San Diego State, maybe Utah State, Gonzaga for basketball.
Yep.
But now they have two teams. And frankly, like, you can't just, like, okay, if the Pac-12 and the Mountain West merged, or essentially at this point, that's just the Washington State and Oregon State jumping into the Mountain West. You can't call that the Pac-12.
No.
You're turning an entire Group of Five conference into a Power Five, which is just no. Like Nevada is not a Power Five team. No shots at Nevada, but like Nevada is not a Power Five team. And frankly, looking at Oregon State and Washington State, okay, Oregon State won the College World Series a few years ago. But like other than that, do those two teams win national championships? I'm not trying to throw shots. I'm just facing them. Like, do they win national championships?
No, they don't.
So I don't think you're going to hurt anyone's feelings except for Oregon State and Washington State if you tell them to go to the Mountain West.
So this is what I would like to see is I'd like to see them go to the American.
Dude, like
because hear me out. So the American's got Tulane.
Mm-hmm.
It's got UTSA.
Yep.
We got FAU. They have some good teams. They have Memphis. They have Rice, good academics. UAB is decent basketball. They could. I say if they get those two teams, they could argue that that's like teetering the Group of Five to Power Five.
Yeah, well, and the American has been doing that for years. Like the American is basically the Power Six. So.
Yeah, and like SMU, if SMU didn't move, I think that would have been the logical move for Oregon State and Washington was to jump into the American because SMU would help. I think they try to go and grab a team somewhere else, grab like a Fresno State who they've had great players coming from there.
Fresno's valid, yeah.
Boise State, Liberty would be a good one. San Diego State. I see like that's like a good spot. Like obviously teams from the MAC aren't gonna move. I don't see. You could see like Air Force maybe leave the Mountain West and join, but I don't think that would help them that much. Wyoming would be a pretty decent shout. That could help. No one from the Sun Belt would really help anything.
But
I think that's their best logical option, though. If they want to try to continue acting like they're a Power Five, try to join the American.
yeah, so there's two things I want to just say. One, the reason I don't like that is just because the American is mostly the Southeast and a bit of the Midwest.
Yep.
So now you're getting the Pacific Northwest, which honestly, I don't know why I'm upset about that. Like clearly nobody cares about geography anymore. But the other thing is I get where you're coming from. However, I think you just listed like 6 schools. Now we're building another massive conference.
No, and I don't think all of them should join. I think, but they should definitely. If just Washington State and Oregon State hypothetically join the American, that's not enough. Add one more school that has always been like we're going to play them. They may be a mid-major, but they're still pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Like add one of those schools, and then you can argue that we're now the last Power 5 school. Yeah, sure, you're going to be very far behind for a couple of years, but then I think you can develop. I mean, you got Tulane, who's ranked right now. They just won the Cotton Bowl last year. Yeah, you got 2 teams that are going to join from the Pac-12. You got UTSA, who had an amazing season 2 seasons ago, had a pretty good one last year. I mean, you got good teams in there. You have teams that are recognizable.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just feel like they join the Mountain West and call it Raps. Like the Pac-12 is going to do everything that it can to survive, but I don't think there's a logistical path.
They need to dissolve.
The Apple deal that they took sunk that entire conference.
What a dumb idea.
I know the Mountain West. I don't think they have extended invitations to Oregon State and Washington State, but I saw a headline a few days ago that like they have reached out.
Yeah, I did see that as well.
I think that's in their best interest, frankly, and just get this whole saga over with. I mean, It is crazy how the Pac-12 just completely exploded this year. It's dead.
It's a disaster.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess you're right, Diego. Oregon State can win the Pac-12 next year, assuming that it still exists. Do you have a dog of the day?
So I'll give it to Max Verstappen.
All right, we're switching sports.
Yeah, just quick change of sports real quick because I couldn't tell you based on college football who I'd want to give it to. I guess Shedeur Sanders, but
W. Dude's a dog.
Max Verstappen broke the record for most consecutive wins in Formula One history. He's now won 10 races in a row. Is it boring? Yes. But is it dominant? Also, yes. So my dog of the day.
Nice. Shedeur is definitely a contender. He's not my dog of the day, but he is definitely a dog of the day for sure. Shout out Shedeur. Mine is Mac Brown. Mac Brown, head coach at North Carolina right now. That win over USC, or South Carolina, excuse me, was his 100th win at the helm of the Tar Heel program, making him the only coach in FBS history to have 100+ wins at two separate institutions. He had over 100 wins with Texas, and he had over 100 wins, or now has 100 wins at UNC. So shout out Mac Brown.
Yeah. So three dogs right there.
Amen. All right. Do you have any games you're looking forward to for week 2? I'll go ahead and tell you right now, the game of the week for week 2 for me is Alabama and Texas. Texas almost beat Alabama last year. Final score was 22-19 Bama. It is in Tuscaloosa this year. Alabama's going to win, I think, most definitely. But Texas, I think, is going to be better this year than they were last year. And, hey, it's a preview. Texas to join the SEC next year. So that's definitely the game I am most looking forward to.
There's some definitely exciting games here. I would say Notre Dame, NC State. It's 2 Power 5 schools. It would be good. Tulane, Ole Miss. This will be a real test for Tulane. They are ranked right now, so.
Yeah, both of those teams are in the lower 20s right now.
Yeah, and so SEC school, that'll definitely test you. SMU, Oklahoma, be a good, exciting one. There's obviously you point out the massive one, which obviously I'm excited to watch. I think the only thing is, how do you, with all these teams who put up those incredible performances, how do you only put up 37 against Rice? It's Rice.
37 points is still a lot of points. So.
It's Rice though. Cal, Auburn, not a bad game, but. Yeah, I think the big one is definitely going to be that Texas-Alabama one.
Yeah, most definitely. Right. That is going to do it for this installment of the Dogs on the Hill podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today, Diego. It was a pleasure to have you.
Lovely talking to you too, Reeves.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, college football has started. NFL starts Thursday night. Chiefs-Lions kick off, baby. Thank you so much for joining. We will catch you guys next time.